Welcome to another segment of ACRPtv. This is part of our ongoing series looking at the days in the lives of different professionals across the clinical trial spectrum. As you all are well aware, CRA, CTC, they can be different things to different people sometimes. So the titles are a little broadly mixed around with in our industry just a little bit. So we're actually trying to burrow down and talk to people who are actually doing specific jobs at specific places to learn more about how they operate so that others can learn more about this field and perhaps join it as well. Today, we're really psyched to have with us Celine Lee from Merck, and she's a CTC, which is great to talk about. So Celine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk about how you function overall as a CTC, kind of your role at Merck, and as much as you can. I know you have a lot going on different days, but maybe give us a typical day as much as you can.
Sure. So CTCs in general are needed throughout the entire study from start to finish. And a lot of your activities or responsibilities are based more on which stage your clinical trial is in. So for most part, I am mostly in like startup stages. So meaning I do a lot of activities and responsibilities that include getting sites ready for the clinical trial. So we first have to screen them and select them, and then do a lot of document reviewing and document collection in order to make sure we abide by FDA regulations. And that's a lot of more of the responsibilities for the startup phase. And for maintenance, for maintenance studies, it might be more of maintaining our timelines and making sure we are running our clinical trials smoothly. We do a lot of reports and generating and reviewing those reports and making sure that we reconcile anything that needs to be reconciled, and to make sure we maintain our timelines and deadlines for those specific trials.
Okay, the question I'm about to ask you, I feel like if I ask 50 people, I get about 45 different answers. But how did you get into this field?
Yeah, so ever since I was younger, like even in high school, I had an inclination for joining the healthcare industry, and that really shaped a lot of my experiences in college and in my master's program. I did a lot of internships at pharmaceutical companies. And that really set me up for my current role. I knew I wanted to continue working in the clinical realm, and I think it's a very fulfilling role. So that's definitely and ultimately why I got into clinical research.
So it sounds like you actually had a clearer idea of this than I think the average person. Most people I talk to, they often use the word stumble into it. You had some idea you were going in this direction, which is a little unusual. It's great, but it's not the typical answer I hear. You talked about it a second ago, but what makes you passionate about being a CTC and being in this career?
Yeah, definitely. Being in clinical trials can be very complex. There's many different roles and many different pathways. And I think what's really interesting is a lot of people have different skill sets, but all the people working in clinical trials can come together and really do a great job in running and maintaining these clinical trials. So also the end results obviously is that we are able to bring a product to commercialization, which ultimately is the most important part and the most important end goal of clinical trials. So, and these products have a huge impact in the day-to-day lives of people. We are able to improve their day-to-day life and their lifestyle, and really improve patients' outcomes. So I think that's the most passionate thing I am what I am most passionate about working with clinical trials.
Now, one of the goals for these segments is to reach out to people a little younger than you, even perhaps in high school or college, or people even maybe a little older thinking about a career change. And they maybe don't know too much about clinical research. They maybe didn't quite have the clarity you had, even at a relatively young age. What kind of advice would you give to a high school person, a college person, or again, even someone maybe thinking about changing careers from something else? What kind of advice would you give them to think about pursuing a career in clinical research?
Yeah, so I think the biggest barrier is getting over that uncomfortableness in you might be coming from a different background, or you're coming into clinical research as a new it's new to you. So I think that the first step is to overcome that barrier and not be afraid to find more information. And that could be talking to people that might be at your internship or at your school or college, or even on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people within the pharmaceutical industry are very open to talk about their experiences and their um, paths and jobs. So that's a great resource. And having many different perspectives is even better. You can um, ask many different questions, and that allows you to better understand how you might like the field yourself and how you might fit in with your skills.
Fantastic. Well, I really want to thank you for joining us today, Celine Lee at Merck. She's a CTC. This is part of our ACRP TV segment on a day in the life of a CTC. Celine, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.